Hi, I'm Curt Doty with RealmIQ. This is our podcast, RealmIQ Sessions, where we talk about everything AI with AI leaders from around the world. Give us a follow or subscribe where you can, wherever you do. And today's guest is Mel Lim. She has built Chateauz with a Z, a platform augmenting and scaling XR and spatial computing experience with data science. We are also fellow alumni from Art Center. If you didn't know, Mel, welcome, Mel. So let's get into it. We would love to hear how AI is integrated into your platform. And please tell us about this platform because it sounds so fascinating.
Well, perhaps I could give you a little bit of a background of how it started and then
Sure.
why we're integrating data science or place data science as a core in our technology here. So Chateauz was born out of observation and experience working with really large enterprise, helping them adopt into XR in the last decade. And through our experience, my team and I have encountered three things that enterprises face, which is number one, adoption. So not a lot of enterprise have that kind of budget to kind of, hey, Mel, go figure out how to leverage XR and help us, figure things out, right? So adoption is a big challenge because aligning business use cases with the right technology or right platform is a challenge. Hundred and something, so-called metaverse platforms out there, and typically they're built upon Unity, Unreal Engine, or gaming, like a Roblox type technology. And enterprise, they get excited. Enterprises and brands, they get excited. They want to, they want to be, they have this FOMO, right? They want to get into this, but they don't know which platform to use, why, and how to fully leverage the technology behind it. So adoption is number one challenge.
I agree.
Once you figure out the adoption and the business use cases, then okay, you build the space out, then you hire people like an agency, and you do all these things, and then you bump into the issues of scalability. How can I scale this from a 100-person event or spatial use to thousands of people? And then at that point, you may stick to that one particular platform you've started with, or you may outgrow it, and then you may want to move your assets from one engine to another, and that's a challenge for enterprise.
Mhm.
And the third part is doing, after you figure out the first two, then you have to answer to the key stakeholders within the enterprise. So what's the ROI, Mel? So
Yeah,
you
right.
you have us
Business
do all
model.
these, right? You have us do all these things, and are we really getting anything out of this XR initiative? So we realized that enterprise would typically want to leverage XR for two business outcomes. The first one is, are we, generating revenue, more revenue by implementing this tech, or are we, saving money implementing this tech? And in order for us to fully understand and answer those questions, we have to go back to step one, which is, what is it being used for? What are the top business use cases? And without fully understanding what that entails, you can't put metrics together. You don't know what you're looking for. What are some of the signals? And so we had rolled out a really massive so-called metaverse initiative about 3 to 4 years ago for a really large tech company. And what we've learned is, at the end of the day, they are all interconnected. Like all these top three challenges are interconnected. And, we were solving it manually, right? We would plant like, some of our analysts and designers into the space so that we can observe we did a manual ethnography, right, in a digital space to kind of observe the human behavioral changes and then report it back to the key stakeholders and say, hey, this is what we observed. There's a better way of doing this. It shouldn't be this complex.
Mhm.
Adoption shouldn't take 6 to 9 months, which typical agencies would take. Scaling it shouldn't be this costly where you have to hire, and grow your team and hire more 3D designers to do this. And the third part is if we can figure out the first two, then we need to automate and then give you the right contextual insights or data that way you can scale this even further. That's why Chateauz was created. We went back to another client and we say, hey, we have this idea. And then our client ended up becoming one of our early investors. And then we built Chateauz. And so Chateau today is looking at those three parts. First part is adoption. So we built out a recommendation engine that will match business use cases, based on your industry or vertical with the right platform. And then our properties, so we consider them as properties, our virtual spaces. They live on several platforms out there that we have battle tested, that we love and trust. And then brands can pretty much come in and say, hey, we like this space on this platform, and we'll get you up and running in a couple weeks instead of 6 to 9 months out. And
Yeah.
the reason why we're doing that is because we want you to jump in and start experimenting. And the experience can only get better as you iterate. So we need to start learning, how you're fully using the space. My background is in architecture from Art Center, right? So I'm all about spatial design. I'm all about learning how to create spaces that's going to create an experience, right? Depending on the use case. If I'm creating this as an e-commerce experience, or if I am I creating this space for a collaborative future of work application. So creating these spaces, and clients may come back and say, hey, we want to take the same space and we want it for, initially they started as a future of work. We want to switch up the use case to, external facing, vendor day, investor relations, or even an e-commerce play. And when that happens, the metrics will change. And that's where Chateauz will come in, and we are building out a full data infrastructure that we are learning the user behavioral and engagement. And we're using data science to augment the front end experience. And that's how we're going to be helping enterprise scale this, so that I'm not going to be having, my designers go back in and keep on changing the spaces. Rather, we're using data and AI to augment the spatial experiences so it's accurate. And imagine going to a space and you think that, as a designer, oh, I'm going to design a beautiful pink space or a purple space, right? And then you find out that no, the users themselves actually they prefer, a black and white space. It's
Right. Yeah. You can't impose what you
Suppose
think
you
onto
what
the
you think.
client,
That's
right?
right, right. So it's what the users are going to be responding to,
Yeah.
and that's what we're learning, right? With data science, we're learning how they behave. And in spatial computing, the data science is very different than a very linear 2D experience, right? In spatial computing, you're looking at ambience, sound. It's very sensory driven, right? Like you can change from a day scene to a night scene, and oh my god, someone's gonna go, wow, I am much more relaxed now, and I
Right.
can meander through the space not feeling as though I'm in a work mode, right? So those are the some of the critical events that we're looking for, and then using AI to recommend or make a contextual recommendation that say, hey, if you want to use this for e-commerce space, perhaps this is where you should be putting some of your high ticket items, because this is where most people will congregate. So those are the things we are looking for.
That's amazing. Yeah, when you speak about adoption, obviously it is the biggest hurdle. AI adoption, I think, really took off, but in terms of corporate America and brands embracing it, that's the second wave of adoption that needs to happen. So I appreciate the fact that you've made it a priority and recognize it as one of the deterrents, right, from success, is that there's no adoption. And I appreciate your history in terms of recognizing also the kind of event driven kind of brand marketing that has been happening along with technology, NFTs and metaverse. And, I come from the entertainment world and movie studios. And so there was a lot of millions of dollars thrown into these literal one-offs of virtual environments, like recreate
That's
Mars. You
right.
can you can be on Mars. It's like, oh, you spend $1 million on that, and then after the movie release, what happened? Oh well, that one goes.
Exactly.
Right.
And that is why we are doing this, right? Because in a, we're a startup. So I've been in the tech space for almost 2 decades. And what I've learned is you gotta really talk to the customers and really understand what are some of the wins and losses, and perhaps when listening or observing those scenarios, there's an opportunity for innovation, right? So, for instance, we were talking to this big luxury brand, and they said, we had spent millions of dollars rolling out this first initiative, and it was super successful. We got millions of visitors coming in and, meandering through the space. And then we spend the second time, triple the amount, and it was a flop. And
Mm.
then so then there are many reasons for the flop. But one of the key things we asked, did you actually measure the first success? Like have a metric of success,
Yeah.
right? Like, is it
KPIs.
right, the KPIs? Like, is this purely to create brand awareness? Is this for engagement? Is this for some kind of e-commerce conversion? Like, what are those metrics? And like you said, KPIs, and there were none. So for them to kind of blindly go in and try to replicate the second time around, thinking that, hey, I was successful the first time, the second time is going to be equally as great, it was sad. Like for us, it's like, oh, what a missed opportunity. Because again, a lot of money and effort and time put into with such big hopes, and then it flopped. And situations like this, I am very cautious, because as we onboard enterprise and brands into Chateauz, we hear that's always this hesitancy, like, oh, we tried it and it didn't work out.
Yeah,
We
right.
don't want to
Why
do it
did
again,
Yeah,
right?
you gotta dig into
Yeah.
the nose,
So
right?
yeah, so we gotta put up. We got okay. Hold on a second. Why are you so afraid of this? Like, oh, it's because it costs so much money to buy everybody the Oculus headset. Oh no, what we call that MetaQuest headset. And then we're like, oh, did you know that today you don't have to have a VR headset to experience, because as this is a technology that is constantly improving. I mean, 10 years ago when we started building things out versus now, it's this huge leap, right, in terms of
Sure.
technology. Now you can stream high fidelity experiences. You don't have to be confined to the low polygon count, the non-shading. Now you can have really beautiful branded experiences. So those are the things that we're trying to learn, right? Oh, we tried it 5 years ago or 6 years ago with
Yeah.
that cardboard box,
Everything,
cardboard
everything.
glass.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
now
Oh
we're
my
like, oh no, 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 that is so different today. And so those are the things that when as a creator, you go in, but you want to listen. You want to listen to why are they struggling in the first place. But then you know what the good thing is, that the silver lining is they're curious, which means
Yeah, otherwise you
whatever.
wouldn't have the conversation, right? You wouldn't be
Exactly.
in the room.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think it's very important to understand the context of technology as it comes out, and give that brief history, which you probably do. Give that history of where we came from, where we are now, and what the difference is. Because a lot of these brand activations, I'm telling you, they were worthless. They spent a lot of money, and then it damaged the kind of
Yes.
reputation and opportunity
Yes.
moving forward as the technology is still advanced, right? It's still,
That's right.
and now it's exponential. So
Yes.
just even in the past year, it's just amazing. And so you have to relitigate the past and kind of disprove all these perceptions of, Web3 was a ripoff, crypto was a ripoff, NFT was a ripoff.
Metaverse, was a
The
high. Yeah.
metaverse, it's like Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg was a ripoff.
That's right. Yes.
Mark
Yeah.
But Zuckerberg only talks about AI now. What happened to the metaverse? They renamed their company Meta. That was a big mistake.
Yeah.
So it's a frustrating challenge. And I've been dabbling and producing in all these various technologies. And when they first come out, I look at, well, what is the business opportunity? Because I was trying to connect it to brands and show potential and all that. And, especially with, headsets and VR, I only went so far and realized, there's this thing called a headset that, people just aren't going to adopt. And the price is a factor. And then I also got into immersive retail. Right. So the retailers, what is that experience? And is it with the headset? And it's like, it's just complete disconnect. And so I waited out. I tiptoed in. It's like,
Well, okay,
I'm
so
gonna
this is
wait.
a
I'm gonna wait.
yeah,
But when
yeah.
AI came out, because I was in the Web3 space for 2 years with a social media company, and they could just never get off the ground based on funding. But I immersed myself, no pun intended, into what are all the possibilities that Web3 presented, from commerce opportunities to community building to ownership and support of a creator economy. That was the focus, and a lot of it, damage was the reputation was damaged, through FTX collapse and NFT collapse, and it was just really hard. People that didn't understand it, right? Even though I could immerse myself and figure out, okay, I can make all and make
Well,
experience.
yeah. I think this is an opportunity to almost kind of like like in the tech world we say like noise versus signals, right? So, and then there's a couple things here. We are definitely like my team and I are early adopters in pretty much all things tech. Like we were working on like consulting for a big data and then company, and then big data became cloud computing, so that was like 15 years ago. And it's been, when there is something new, there's always going to be a group of people that are going to have to just be so, how to say, have this deep conviction and just know that this is going to change the way we work or communicate or collaborate 5 to 10 years from now. And so you have to stick to it. You don't have to. It's just like I'm a fanatic. So I'm a big tech person. So I stick to it, right? So you stick to it and then you start looking on at the trend and you start to learn that this cyclical, is that how you call it? Cyclical,
Cyclical,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's
History
and you
repeating itself.
yeah, it's like it's this, in any new tech there's always this momentum of overhyping something and then it dies down,
Hype
and
cycle.
that's
Yep.
that's where things will get very exciting after the hype, because
Yeah, and it's on the curve coming back up, right?
yes, because
And
only a few of us will be around, because everyone will kind of jump ship. And I joke about this a lot because I've noticed, like I was on another customer call and they said, Mel, have you noticed that all the metaverse folks are now in the AI space? And I laughed out so hard. And I was like, well, AI has been around for a very long
yeah,
time,
right.
especially for us in the technology space. We have been doing machine learning and, deep learning and all of
Actually,
that,
50
and big
years,
data.
50 years,
Yeah.
50 years.
Yeah. So like for us, but what is exciting about the LLM, which is the large language model today, is it's because it has this ability to understand and generate and predict content in a large contextual setting, and it's able to have all these, people are using it for generative AI, for instance, right? But for us, we're still on the like Chateauz is still you looking at that model and more like how do we understand behavioral science or user behavior within spatial computing. So we're pretty narrow. We're not jumping into the hype of using ChatGPT to create an API and then turn it into a business and then go sell it, right? So that's
Right.
not us. And kudos for those who have figured that out, and that's their passion, and that's great because I have friends that, hey, I just asked ChatGPT to come up with some shit for me, and then I have a company now. I'm gonna go sell my API, which is phenomenal because I feel like it's allowing folks to create businesses for themselves. It's just that my team and I are truly in this for the long run. And so when we envision what would this be like 10 years from now and how does it really impact enterprise level solutions and brand experiences, then the conversation has to change, right? So then you're looking at, of course, we're going to sit back here and we're going to predict, okay, adoption is always going to be a challenge. And it's because there's noise, there's confusion. So a lot of education has to happen. However, you look at all these other different companies, Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, they're all entering the space. They're all getting into the spatial computing space, and they're all dumping billions of dollars in this. And it's predicted, like I think by 2032, the economy is going to be 630 billion in spatial computing economy. Huge. It's
I think
huge.
it's a huge opportunity for user experience designers, because
Yeah. Oh, and
there's
it
a big
changes.
worry about, is technology going to make people,
No, it's
not,
actually
take away their
forcing.
jobs. And it's like, I think it's
Oh,
all new.
yeah.
It's all going to change, and the world's
Yes.
changing, and we need to change with it. And
Yes.
I think there's nothing but opportunity. And
Yes.
and I think because of all that big money that's being pumped into it, means you're going to get paid more because it's new media versus old media.
Well, then you have to learn, right? So you have to adopt. So you have to go, yes, the headsets might be clunky. However, like, I have all the headsets. So I love I'm like one of those people that can be in my headset for hours. And so I noticed that, as a designer, from architecture all the way to product UX and UI design, the way that I'm looking at spatial UX UI, it's so different now. Like it has to be a lot more intuitive, and I'm borrowing a lot of these gamification strategy, right, from the gaming world, but also look at how do I apply it in the context of a collaboration tool or in a context of a commerce play, right? Do I really want to have my users jump around just to buy a bag? I don't know. Maybe the users, it depends on the audience. Gen
Right.
Z, yes. My kids, yes. They want to jump around to go get a sweater, right? But, for my girlfriends and I who are big shoppers, and then by the way, women are big shoppers, right? And then we control pretty much like the household spending.
Right.
But you ask like the different demographics, they want to still be, how do you say this? They still want to have this memorable experience and curated experience, especially with luxury brands. They still want to be awed and inspired. Perhaps gamification has to be redefined for them. They may not be the audience that is going to put on the headset and jump around, but they do want to experience a product or a spatial experience differently, and how do we use the technology to create that wonder and awe, but at scale, right? It's not just
Yeah.
for one person. You have to do it
Right.
for millions of users. So
Multiple personas.
the yeah, so those are the interesting opportunities for innovation. So we're not looking at AI or XR as just, oh, it's a fun Roblox game, which by the way, I love Roblox, but it's more of how do we leverage the technology to enable a user from a different groups, right? From a different, generation to still have that, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I want more. That's at least that's what the brands are telling us. How do we
Yeah.
create that?
Yeah. I think, when you do user persona profiling or development, there's the hardcore users, and then there's the lazy users,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, right.
And you have to serve both communities, right? Because
Yes.
each of them will jump. If it isn't immersive enough, they'll say, it's very shallow. And the people who just want to buy that sweater, they're like, yeah, I went in there and bought the sweater and I'm out. It's like pretty cool. It was cool as I went, but I got my sweater. I was exposed to a new thing. And it was
And
cool
not
how
to
I, transacted,
yeah.
right, with it.
Right. Well, not to mention the word transaction is a very touchy word, right? For a lot of brands, it's like we don't want our experience to be so transactional. Come in and just buy. They want it to be where we want you to experience fully our brand DNA, right? And then so it's a deeper type of engagement. Then you're looking at users coming into, we're building out all these 3D commerce experience, immersive commerce, right? And you're looking at a user that's coming in, and you have to actually understand if if it's a luxury brand versus a mid-level, brand,
Retail.
and you're talking about difference of a handbag that's $8,000 versus $200, right? And so is the technology going to make the person go, oh, I really need to see this in person, and I want to view it on the site, but I want to get excited enough where I am going to go down and walk down the street and go to the store
Yeah.
and then make that transaction happen, right? Or, I'm just gonna post up a photo on the website and yeah, it's $8,000. What kind of experience do you want to deliver? That's the thing, right? And you can use technology in a sense where it doesn't have to be so ubiquitous. It can be curated. It can be where maybe we don't show 100 SKUs. Maybe we only do 10 SKUs. It's a paradox of
Well,
choice, you know.
you talked
It
about it at learning, right? So
right.
it's really, I mean, if that one shopper goes into multiple brands experience and their activity is tracked, obviously
Mhm.
there will be a recognition, and then whatever the
Yes,
next experience is then served up to them based on their behavior,
that's
right?
right.
So that's
Yes,
the beauty of what you're building, right? Because
yes,
you're not taking anybody for granted, and you recognize that you need to have all these possibilities, but you want to do it through machine learning so that you learn more
yes,
about
yes.
customer.
Without us compromising on data, data privacy and compliance. Absolutely not. I
No,
mean,
no.
we're very aware of that, GDPR, CCPA, and all of that.
Yeah.
But again, that's where AI comes in, and it will give you really, even today we're talking to a tech partner, and you can even use, the LLM to learn, like, hey, if a person is actually going to be gravitating towards that $8,000 handbag, the adjacent brands, you do this in branding. Adjacent brands could be like, a Range Rover, or they will have a black Amex card, whatever, right? But the AI today is so rich that the accuracy is what we're looking for. Like, how accurate is this data set that I am going to be
Right, right. And
presented?
we've never been there before, and that's
I know, and
what's
that's why it's exciting, and
yeah, it
we
is
may get it,
exciting.
we may get it wrong the first couple, but the machine, that's why it's called machine learning. It will learn. It will
Yeah,
learn, why you choose certain things, and you even as even when you shop on Amazon today. In the past, 10 years ago, if you buy like a pen, it will keep on recommending you pens, even though
yeah,
that you bought a pen.
right.
But today,
Even if you
if you
talk
buy
about it, it's
but
not.
today, if you
It's
buy a
listening.
pen, they will recommend you maybe a notepad, maybe a backpack,
Right. Yeah.
all sorts of things
Infinity.
that's gonna go with that pen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, and I'm sure you're sensitive to this, but the use of nomenclature or the butchering of nomenclature and describing things is very difficult to navigate, because what was experience design and immersive entertainment or immersive experiences, those are the things that fell flat, that didn't lead to the KPIs and transactional type of results that brands ultimately needed. I love the fact that you just used e-commerce as a word. So where do you stand on what is the right language moving forward, because language is so important. I'm a
It is,
communicator, so
I know, but here's the thing too, because this we're in the emerging tech space, it's still being defined. It is just like how the word metaverse was so butchered in the last three
um,
years. It's like, oh, it has such a bad connotation. We even removed that word out of our pitch deck
yeah,
because
good.
we got investors got all like confused. Like, "Yeah, isn't that what Mark is doing with Facebook?" And I'm like, oh God, I'm not gonna go down
Don't
that
even
path,
go there.
right? Don't even go there. But I have to understand that we are all these. I hate to use the word pioneers, but it's almost like we're building cutting edge solutions, which means even with the tech partners that we're doing this with, everyone is defining their own little niche. And I laughed because I was trying to present something to an investor a couple of days ago, and one of our AI pieces, it was clunky, right? And I go, who made an update? Because that was my first question. Who can update? Is it our tech partner? Is it AWS, or is it
Yeah.
our streaming guys? Like, who is it, right? Like, I need to go find out who made an update, because then I have to go figure out with my engineering team how to update on our end, on our platform. But it's that, and it's like everyone is trying to do something, and not at your speed. They have their own milestones, right? And then so as everything starts to reiterate and change, it's like Gumby, like almost like a Play-Doh.
Yeah, it's very,
And
very, very malleable.
yes, and then you gotta go with it, and then you go. But here's the thing: what I do know is what we don't want to be.
That's
You
very
know,
that's very important.
yes,
I
yes,
would add, because I work with many startups, and very tech driven, right? And my job is to bridge the gap between that tech talk to consumer language that people can understand and embrace. Is something no one could understand what Web3 was. But if you say, no, we're empowering content creators to, be in charge of their own revenue, it's like, oh, I get that.
Or in our world, it's called data sovereignty,
Yeah.
right? Or yeah.
Yes, but yeah, DAOs, right? Yeah. So, language is important to me because I'm the branding and marketing guy. So I'm constantly, worried or really hyper focused on the use of language and or abuse of language, and helping and advising, founders and CTOs that it's like, yeah, stop the tech talk. You got to put it into human terms so that people can understand what you're doing, because it's amazing what you're doing. But if people can't make the leap, maybe showing it helps. That's certainly the aha moment.
Yes,
But then
yes,
there's this, marketing push. Certainly investors need to have it simplified, because a lot of they're savvy because they see a lot of things, but they also need, talk to me like I'm a fifth grader, just so I get it. Because if I'm going to give you money, it has to work for ultimately for the
yes,
consumer, or
yes.
B2B play, whatever your play is.
The language has to be tweaked for both the brands, the enterprise, and then the investor side. Even on the investor side, I've noticed that we presented to a handful of them, and they're not all quite there with, like, they know, like, spatial computing, they know, like, it's a hotbed, right? And they want to get their hands on some of the whatever. And then, like, the more you talk to them, and they're like you said, talk to me like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And then you have another set of investors who are they're like operators, they're like technical founders turned investors, right? So they get into it. Show me your tech stack. Walk me through it, right?
Yeah.
Like, what
Right.
is your moat? Is your IP defensible? Walk me through your patents. Da 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 da. Da. I said, what kind of language are you implementing here? Like, there's a faster way to do this. They get very technical. So this is where I almost have to bring in my engineering team to go like, okay, he's gonna ask that question. Be
Yeah.
prepared, right? So
Oh,
you have to
that's
you have to you have to do the, I would call it dance, right? Like, hey, when is it to turn up a little bit more of that technical jargon? And then for the business side, I often find myself, if I could just, like you said, show it, if I could explain business use cases, if I can show some stats. And some of these guys are just like pure stats guys. They just want to see some statistics,
yeah.
some data, like, give me that, and then I can understand this. So I have to do a little dance, but I am a technical founder, so I do get very technical with
Well,
my customers
yes.
sometimes. But you know what? It's a good learning process for both parties. I have found that to be true, and
Yeah, I
they
mean,
come to
that's what being a pioneer is, right? That you're going into where no one's been before, and it's exciting, right? And how do you articulate it? How do you sell it? How does an investor learn?
yes,
Because they
yes.
haven't seen what you've done before, so they're likely in awe. And that's how we met. Actually, I was in the Pismo Ventures pitch, and I was in awe with your presentation and your technology,
Thank
and I was so
thank
impressed.
you, thank you,
Yes, and
thank you.
I was also very impressed with you and how you presented yourself. So, that's why I wanted to, have you on this show, because
Oh,
we
thank
we like to
you.
we like to discuss technology and AI, because I think, we don't do demos on the show, but I think it's the conversations like these that help break down the walls of, misperception, and
Yes,
confusion,
yes,
and you work towards a common understanding of language and technology, and the new acronyms, whatever they may be. But
yeah.
I think conversations like this really do help people and help adoption. That's what I'm very concerned of, is adoption. And so I'm doing my part on having these conversations to help with that, because there's too many, certainly in the AI world, there's too many demos, and the technology changes every week, and these platforms
Oh,
are trying to
ev
outdo each
ev
other,
yes,
and they release them too
yes,
soon, or they're faking
yes.
their demos like Google just did. So um,
I get it a lot on LinkedIn. Like, my friends always send me, "Oh, check this out," and I'm like, Yeah, but what they fail to show you is that you actually have to put on a goggle to view that
Yeah.
content. And
Right.
and
They
what they
just saw
fail
this
to show,
experience as a
yeah, they
video.
fail that. And then it's that, it's a I had this conversation with another friend, and she was saying that, oh, AI is gonna take my job, and how do I know all these things and that? And I said, well, just consider it as a tool, right? Like we use, we love generative AI, like we use Midjourney, for instance. And in the past, for us to comp a design out or a concept out, it'll at least take a couple of weeks, right, for us to sketch and put everything together, but put the materials boards, concept and all that. Now it's like I just enter a few keywords that I would typically use for my mood board anyway, and then boom, you have the visuals, right?
Right.
Now, from the visual to the actual build of a 3D space, it's
Right.
very different,
Yes.
right? Like
Right.
you still have to take and build every single thing that you see in that, and you have to put it in either 3D Studio Max or Cinema 4Ds, which was what I use.
Mhm.
And then you still have to take that and then put it into a game engine, which is either Unity or Unreal or Roblox. There is the workflow. It's still there. It's not like, oh, boom, it's gonna go from point A to
No,
Z.
no, no.
We're not there yet. We're not there
It's
yet.
pre-visualization and concept, which is
Yes,
great. I mean, what a
yes,
fantastic tool. Uh,
yes,
you still need someone creative, like with some type of
yes,
vision and purpose, right?
yes,
To actually design the world. Because yeah, I could design, hey, make me a volcano that's spewing out rainbows and Skittles and see what
that's
that
right.
looks like. It's like, okay, well, I can see the use case for Skittles, but why, right? And
Yes,
you go into, Mid-Journey or whatever, and you give a prompt, and you already have a world in your mind that you're trying to get to, and you're trying to use these tools, it's software,
yes. It's
to
it's
somehow match your vision, right?
yes,
That
yes.
and it really never quite matches, and because
No,
it, it
yes.
also it also wants to be creative. You have to realize that it's not just an order taker. It's like, okay, I got your prompt, but I'm going out and finding all this other stuff, and I'm interested in this. And they say, how about this? And they go, well, that was no,
Oh,
that
I
was
know.
not right at all. So you have to
Sometimes
dig
I'll
deeper.
upload, yeah, I'll upload a picture and I'm like, no, I want you to mix this and this. I get very specific and then it still can't do it. And I go, okay, screw this. I'm gonna have to just do it
Yeah, I know.
myself,
So
right?
you end up comping, you take an object out of something, put it in Photoshop, whatever. But that's, a creative, a human being at the center of that. So
Yes,
it's not about
yes,
job loss. It's about learning these platforms, learning the pitfalls, and being inspired or not by what you can generate through Gen AI. And then taking that and it's your personal integrity that's going to say, it's good enough
yes.
or it's not quite good enough and I need to go either to another platform or I do it from scratch. But that's a process. So it's just
That's the
a,
process. That's back to our art center days, right? I
yes,
mean, we
right.
were we were trained in a very rudimentary manual way of
Yeah,
sketching.
yeah. I was
And
there pre-computer, so we were doing everything manual. But yeah, and I was an illustration major, so it was
so
we had
you were
to
the
do
one of the guys that
miracles.
actually went to the
Oh my
the
God.
the body the body drawing, all
Oh
that.
yeah,
Oh,
no, doing movie posters overnight, painting
yeah,
by hand
yeah,
and
you painting by hand.
present
Yeah, I remember
in the morning.
typesetting, right? I used to have a letterpress machine. Okay, so I my
Oh,
hand
okay.
press
Yes.
and a typeset and a hand press. But yeah, but those are it's just a tool. It is just another tool. And then you have to figure out, how do I leverage this technology? Is it going to make my process more efficient? Is it going to then, am I going to be able to take this efficiency and pass the cost savings to my customers, right? And
Or
then
to
in
you.
turn, oh, to me, right? Or like, Chateauz is a tech company. I always tell my customers, we are a tech company. We're not an agency, which means we are constantly updating the tech. We're constantly updating the platform. So it's not just like, oh, I'm building out a beautiful world and I'm gonna give it to you and I'm gonna leave. And then when there's an update, you're like, fuck. Like, do I go back to Mel? Do I hire more people to manage it? No, we are a tech company. So all of our properties are constantly being up because we are learning. We want to learn. KPIs. We want to
Yeah.
learn the behavioral engagements. We want to learn, the events that are happening in the spaces so that we can optimize and then make it better for the customer.
Yes, yes. Hey, we're getting towards the end of our time, but this has been a fascinating conversation and love what you're doing.
Thank
And
you.
love your approach and certainly discussion around technology and creativity. You're a kindred spirit, not only, because we went to the same art school, but that you're a true creative, got into tech, and I think it's really cool. And you've had a really interesting career, and you're doing great things now, and I mean, you were before, but I'm just saying it's exciting what you're working on now, and I'm happy to promote it however I can, certainly through.
Oh, thank you so much. We love our champions.
Yeah, so if you want to plug away on how people can interact with you or the
Yes, yes.
platform,
Find
please.
find me on LinkedIn at Mel Lim. It's Mellim, or go to our Chateauz website. Is chateauz.io. And we recently launched a newsletter that is going to help speed up adoption for enterprise. This is out of my own frustration after hearing, like, oh my God, we spent, 500K 9 months later and we got nothing. And I'm like, what the heck did you guys do? Like,
Yeah.
XR planning didn't take that long. Like, we have all these blueprints and we feel the urgency to share.
Yes, I did see that today,
Yeah.
and that's really excellent, by the way. And it's rarely done by companies because they hold on to their IP, right? But you're just saying, hey, there is a process, and people need to understand the process because it's all new, and adoption is important. And without that education, and or some agreement on what the language is that we can all connect on, so we can move forward.
Yes.
Kudos to
Yes.
you. So it's awesome.
Yes. Well, I always look at our competitors and I go, great, they're doing this. Then we can then say to our other customers, hey, they're doing this, and which means we're not like the first person that's gonna be, tackling this, which means there's a curiosity in this space. And they go, oh, then they feel at ease, like, oh, I didn't know that so and so is doing this, right? So the more adoption, the better. And we just want to make it where we have a big vision, like, by 2030, we hope like 1 million businesses will be onboarded into spatial computing like it was like when website first came out,
Right,
right?
sure.
That's
It had some
that's
hurdles.
where
People didn't trust putting their
oh,
credit
I
card
know.
information into the computer. Well, what happens with it? It's like,
Yes.
so, and now, look at Amazon, right? It's like
I know, right?
ridiculous.
And that's how we see spatial computing, that everything will be so dimensional moving forward.
That's
And
exciting.
we're just excited to be one of those crazy people to adopt this and experiment.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, listen, love this conversation with you, Mel. Thanks for everybody else for tuning in, and catch more of our Realm IQ sessions on your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeart Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and of course, YouTube. And please follow and subscribe once you get there. It's very important to us. So thanks, Mel. I definitely want to have you back with some follow up on your success. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Curt.
RealmIQ. Book your corporate AI workshop today.
Subscribe to our Media Slam newsletter and learn more about the intersection of design, content, and technology.
CurtDoty.co. Branding, marketing, and product development.